Hi, I'm Bruce Killian. My talk is Jesus' Star, Chapter 2, Esther's movie. More background on why the Magi sought Jesus. Buckle up. King David sang, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies display his handiwork." This is my second talk on heavenly signs, and documentation is in the notes. God uses the lights in the sky for precisely dated signs. He tells his stories with planets and constellations, often as connect-the-dots pictures. The starry sky was God's theater, and the actors entered and exited at the horizon. His curtain raised at sunset and lowered at sunrise. The stage backdrops were open to the sky, the palace entrance, the courtyard, the garden, etc., but not inside the palace. God projected a silent mega-hit movie on his big screen to narrate his epic. He gave the wise men its annotated script, the Bible story Esther. The main actors are wandering stars, which we call planets. The Magi knew the 5 brightest planets. They appear first after sundown. Venus, the brightest star, played several roles as queen, and Jupiter, the second brightest, played the king. The Magi knew God paints with heaven's lights. Before calendars, they told when to plant and harvest. The starring actors in Esther had Persian planet names. Esther is Venus, Haman Mercury, and more of Mordecai Mars. The planets move through the 12 zodiac constellations. Their meanings were fixed 4,000 years ago. Here's a mosaic from an ancient synagogue. 12 signs surround the sun. I've circled 2 constellations of interest, Leo or Lion, and Virgo or Maiden or Virgin. Leo represents Ahasuerus, a title meaning Lion King. Mazel Tov, or good constellation, is a common Jewish phrase for your luck has been good. The Magi daily charted the sky, half after sunset and the rest before sunrise. They recorded the wandering stars' positions, particularly a rise with the sun, called a heliacal rise, or a set with the sun, called a heliacal set. These charts are called ephemeris or daily tablets. The Magi came from the east, and the Parthian Empire in green stretched east from the Roman Empire in tan to India. Independent cities and territories are in white. Rome and Parthia warred for centuries. An exception was a short period I'll discuss. Each time Rome invaded, Parthian horse archers soundly defeated them. An exception was after Parthia captured Jerusalem in about 37 BC. Herod retook it with Rome's help, so they made him king of the Jews. The Magi were court officials who wore crowns and advised the empire's king of kings. They were kings. The king's court traveled annually between 7 capital cities, starred, to govern Parthia. The empire's official language was Greek, but the royal court spoke a Persian dialect. Parthia inherited Persian and Greek culture. Act 1, Esther's story. Mordecai was a doorkeeper to the king's palace in the capital of Susa. He adopted his cousin Hadassah, a Jewish orphan. Mordecai means Mars. As a doorkeeper, he stayed near the horizon guarding the entrance. Venus depicted beautiful Queen Vashti. Leo was Ahasuerus, or Artaxerxes in Greek, the Lion King. He held a 6-month feast for his army, officials, and governors. A 7-day feast followed for all of Susa's people in his garden, decorated with white and violet hangings. The hangings depict clouds in the violet sky. Wine to drink was available as the sky's color depicted. Meanwhile, the queen and the women moved inside the palace, so Venus and some of the stars disappeared. Familiarity with Venus's movement helps one understand. Venus starts its cycle as the bright morning star for almost 9 months. It disappears behind the sun for 50 days, then is the bright evening star for almost 9 months. Then it sets at sunset in the west, its helical set. It reappears 8 days later, rising with the sun in the east at its helical rise. On the 7th day, the king summoned Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown, to show her beauty. Vashti didn't appear. Those wearing royal clothes are bright, so easy to spot in the sky. Occasionally, Venus appeared on the 7th day, but it usually appeared on the 8th day. The king commanded Venus to appear early. Act 2. The wise men advise the king, and Esther is prepared and selected. The wise men were the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom. The king asked them, according to the law, what is to be done with Queen Vashti, because she didn't come at King Ahasuerus' command. They said, divorce her, lest the empire's women show contempt for their husbands. So he did. The king likely held the long feast to prime his army to invade Greece. While he was away, they searched the empire for the most beautiful maidens to replace the queen. Hadassah was chosen and renamed Esther, meaning Venus. Venus now depicts Esther. The virgins received cleansing treatments for 6 months and 6 months of beautification treatments. During the fall and winter, Venus, being cleansed, appeared to come and go among the clouds and was washed by rain. The beautification treatments followed during the spring and summer. The sky cleared, and Venus, nearing Earth, became increasingly the brilliant evening star. When only one star is visible in the morning or evening, it's probably Venus. In August 2 BC, Jupiter the king approached Venus in Virgo. This is a pivotal scene. Esther, the bright evening star at sunset, went from the virgin harem with the king into his chamber. On August 13th, 2 BC, Venus and Jupiter at sunset disappeared. The 2 brightest stars appeared and helically set together in the west. The stage now rotates. This is Act 3, from the western evening to the evening morning sky. Haman, the villain, means Mercury, and Mordecai, the hero, means Mars. Mars rose helically in Leo and met Mercury in the pre-dawn stage. Doorkeeper Mordecai stays at the entrance guarding the horizon. Mercury and Mars are the 2 battling dragons I'll discuss. 4 days later, the king returned at Jupiter's helical rise and completed a ruler's staff in Leo. Daily, his staff shortened and became vertical, becoming a golden scepter between the lion's feet. Remember, as discussed in the previous video, Jacob prophesied, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver's staff from between his feet, until he come to whom it belongs. On the 7th day from the king's return, he summoned Esther and made her queen. Venus helically rose as the bright morning star. The movie now progresses at about 1 scene per day. Mordecai overheard 2 eunuchs plot to assassinate the king and reported it. The king thwarted it, and Haman began to hate Mordecai because he helped to thwart his plot. The king made Haman, or Mercury, the highest planet in the scene, his highest official. When Haman entered and exited, Mordecai refused to bow. He was below the horizon and didn't bow. Haman hated Mordecai because he wouldn't bow. Haman's loathing for Mordecai overflowed to hate all Jews. He bribed the king with 10,000 silver talents, or $250 million, to annihilate the Jews. The king issued a decree to execute all of the empire's Jews, and by lot the day chosen was Purim. Mordecai told Esther she must intercede for her people with the king. He said, Who knows whether you became queen for such a time as this? Those in royal apparel are highly visible. Those wearing sackcloth can't come before the king. Mordecai put on sackcloth, and Mars disappeared. If you wear sackcloth or mourning clothes, you disappear from the sky. Esther's dilemma. She can't just go to the king. Anyone entering the king's courtyard uninvited was immediately executed, unless the king extended his golden scepter to them. He hadn't summoned her in a month. In terror, she asked Susa's Jews not to eat or drink until the third day, when she would enter the king's courtyard uninvited. Wherever the decree was announced, the Jews wore sackcloth and wept. Esther and her maids wore mourning clothes and fasted until the third day. The sky was cloudy for 2 days. The Jews, as Abraham's descendants, were like the stars of heaven. Their tears fell as rain. On the third morning, the clouds cleared. Esther entered the king's court in royal apparel, and the king extended his golden scepter to her. Jesus' Star chapter 1 discussed this, but God included additional exciting details. It's unlikely the magi spoke Hebrew, so they used the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament. When one understands God's movie, it's evident Esther in Hebrew was shortened by about 40% from the Septuagint. It more fully described the actors, action, and the action in the sky. It was canonical to all Christians until Martin Luther. The Septuagint reveals Esther entered rosy and faint, and the king was flushed. The 2 brightest stars were rosy at the horizon. He didn't immediately extend his golden scepter. Actors entered the scene in sequence like a flip book. First, the highest, brightest stars enter, then the lower and less bright ones enter. Esther paled, and the king said the law did not apply to you, and tipped his scepter toward her. Esther, you may enter any time. Rising Venus as Esther paled to white. Shortly, 2 little stars entered the scene. 2 handmaids accompanied Esther. She leaned on one, and the other carried her train. The arrow shows the direction they moved. One followed Esther, bearing her gown's train, the blue circle, and Esther leaned on the other, purple circle. Extinction makes the sun, moon, and planets rosy near the horizon and golden slightly higher. The moon appeared only in this scene. It may represent the lotus flower at the top of Artaxerxes' successor's staff, symbolizing the extent of the empire. Another key, heaven's highest lights gathered at dawn. Isaiah said, kings will come to the brightness of your dawn. Isaiah 60, verse 3. The Septuagint includes dreams, decrees, prayers, the assassination plot, scenes, and actor details. Mordecai was introduced as he dreamed of 2 battling dragons. Ultimately, we learn Haman and Mordecai were the dragons, the first 2 planets in the morning sky. Esther invited the king and Haman to a feast in the palace, where we can't watch. After eating, while they drank wine, she invited them to a feast the next day. Act 4, humiliation. When Haman left, Mordecai didn't bow. Enraged, he erected a tall pole to hang Mordecai. Persians were hanged by impaling on a pole. See relief. Comets approach the sun, form a tail that points away from the sun. Comets were a sign of disaster, a word meaning bad star. Informed speculation infers a comet's tail appeared aimed toward Mars. The king couldn't sleep, so his chronicles were read. He learned Mordecai saved his life and wasn't rewarded. He asked, "Who's outside?" Haman waited to ask to hang Mordecai. The king asked Haman, "How would you honor someone the the king wished to honor. Haman thought the king wished to honor himself. He said, "Have the honoree wear the king's clothes and crown. Have the king's most important noble lead him on the king's steed around the town square. He shall shout, 'This is how the king honors one he delights in.'" The king said, "You do all this for Mordecai immediately." Reading his chronicles makes this a flashback. Jupiter the king was alone in his court. Then Mercury as Haman entered. Finally, Mercury led Mars dressed as Jupiter around the town square. Haman led Mordecai dressed as king. You only see Mercury and Jupiter unless you look carefully. Mars was 12 arc minutes from Jupiter. The middle star of the Big Dipper's handle is 2 stars. Those with good eyesight and who look carefully can distinguish them. 12 arc minutes separate them. Here is the sky scene and the artist's depiction. Humiliated, Haman covered his face and went home to his hanging pole and 10 sons. Act 5, the finale. The next day, at Esther's second banquet, the king cheered with wine, said, "Esther, make your request, and I'll grant it up to half my kingdom." She said, "Let my life be spared and my people, for we have been sold to be annihilated." The king asked, "Who?" Esther answered, "This enemy, this wicked Haman." The king went into his garden to consider the matter, so Jupiter appeared first. He returned, and Haman had fallen on Esther. The king said, "Will you attack my queen? Hang him on the pole he erected to hang Mordecai." The king, Esther, and Mordecai witnessed Haman's execution when the comet's tail impaled Mercury. Without Esther's narration, the magi wouldn't understand the dialogue and the unseen action. Haman's 10 sons are lesser stars surrounding him, circled for visibility. They'll be executed and disappear in the hazy sky. Mars climbed into the sky, and the king gave Mordecai Haman's position. Mercury descended and disappeared. A second decree was issued protecting the Jews. On Purim, they lost nothing, so the sky cleared and all the stars, Abraham's children, still shined. The King of Kings and Esther's intimate evening was Jesus' earliest possible conception, August 13th, 2 BC. The movie ends by making Purim a feast and recapping Mordecai's dream. The Magi departed for Jerusalem about Purim to announce the Jewish king's birth. Occasions when a light dawns and the sun rises as Mordecai dreamed. Mars rose and Mordecai was exalted. Venus rose and Esther was exalted. Venus rose again and the shepherds and the Holy Family were exalted. Daniel, the Magi leader, introduced them to the Bible. They studied it and learned God revealed his glory with the stars. God projected a movie, and they realized Esther described it, but it was centuries later. Esther typed a greater reality God proclaimed. They sought one greater than the Persian King of Kings. Like the wise men, study to understand the Holy Scriptures, especially the one who placed, timed, and named the stars. If you learned something, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks. I can answer questions in the comments. I'll solve a chronological problem in the epilogue and share more simple heavenly signs in Jesus' flight to Egypt. Epilogue: the solution to Quirinius' census before King Herod's death. Luke and Quirinius governed and did the census that brought Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem for Jesus' birth. Quirinius did a census when he became governor of Syria in 6 AD, but King Herod was already dead. I'll give solid evidence Quirinius governed Syria earlier. When was Quirinius' census? There isn't a consensus, but most look before 1 BC. Gaius Caesar was Emperor Augustus Caesar's 19-year-old grandson and intended successor. Augustus sent him from Rome to govern Syria on January 29, 1 BC. Syria bordered the Parthian Empire and included Herod's kingdom. Gaius's mission was to visit the eastern provinces and learn to govern. Augustus ordered Quirinius, an experienced statesman, to tutor Gaius to accelerate his training as governor. Quirinius had governed 2 nearby provinces. Now he governed but wasn't governor. Luke 2:2 says he governed, but most translations say he was governor. So Master Quirinius and apprentice Gaius together governed Syria. Gaius and Quirinius reached Syria about March 1 BC. Gaius made peace with Phraates, the Parthian king of kings, and then conducted the census. This brief peace was necessary for the Magi to enter Roman territory. Gaius died battling the Parthians in 3 AD, so Jesus' birth and Quirinius' census were after spring 1 BC. Before this, as eminent royalty, the Magi couldn't enter the Roman Empire except in disguise or with an army. God ordained peace for their visit. Herod received them as ambassadors, and they revealed Jesus' stars. Helpful heavenly signs on the Holy Family's flight to Egypt. The Magi and the Holy Family fled on Passover. An all-night full moon meant no stumbling in the dark. The week-long overland route to Egypt passed Herod's fortress, so very risky. The shortest location for the Holy Family out of Herod's kingdom was Ascalon, a Mediterranean seaport 40 miles west. They had the full moon for both nights needed. They fled through the valley of Elah, where David defeated Goliath. The Magi told Mary of the heavenly staff and scepter. They remembered David's song, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, your rod or scepter and staff comfort me." Sea travel was safer, quicker, and easier than overland, and the Magi gave gold. The weather was a heavenly sign. It was March 29th, and sea travel became safe about mid-March. The wind and currents were favorable, and grain ships went to Egypt, so they took a ship. By March 31st, 1 AD, before the Sabbath, they were safe in Alexandria, Egypt. An Egyptian harvest was a sign, and grain began shipping empire-wide on April 1st. Full moon, safe shipping, gold, and Egyptian grain harvest, evidence of God's planning. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for an occasional update. I can answer questions in the comments. I condensed this talk from a section of my manuscript, Jesus' Star, at www.scripturescholar.com. Thank you.